Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Idahoan Show. Today I'd like to talk a little bit about masks because in light of all of the corona pandemic pandemonium that's going on, it seems like I've seen a lot of social media presenting different ways of making a cloth face mask. And I'm concerned that the vast majority of the designs that are being presented are really little more than an exercise in futility. So today I want to briefly present to you two different mask designs that I've come up with and talk a little bit about when each of them might be useful. But first, I think it's instructive to consider a little bit of background. If we go back and look at the media from several months ago, really before the whole corona pandemic pandemonium really got started, it seems like initially the medical community was pretty unified and pretty assertive in their assertion that medical face masks are going to do little to nothing to stop or to mitigate the hazard of this kind of a virus. And we don't want the public panic buying medical face masks because, that would have the potential to impact, other medical operations. I mean, you don't want to have to shut down a surgical center because you can't get face masks. And therefore, the medical community was basically advising governments not to require or recommend that people wear masks. Well, over the months since then, it seems like the media and possibly certain politicians have sort of browbeat the medical community, or at least portions of the medical community, into saying that, well, maybe a cloth face mask could kind of sort of provide a little bit of protection in certain cases. And then the media and certain politicians have taken that and run with it to the point where some communities now are actually mandating face coverings in public. So that sets the stage for our discussion of masks here today. But now the question that we need to answer in order to design an appropriate mask is this. Is this virus a real, credible, biological hazard that needs to be mitigated through some kind of a mask? I've heard a lot of very strong opinions on both sides of that issue, and I don't feel like I have the expertise to tell you authoritatively which one's right. And so instead, I've come up with two different mask designs depending on how you want to answer that question. That's what we're going to go over next. So first, let's assume you answer the question in the negative. You say, hey, COVID-19 is no worse than the common cold, so the best thing you can do is just get it, get over it, and get on with life. Well, if that's your philosophy, then you probably wouldn't see the need to wear a mask in public, but maybe you've got a mayor or a governor or a supervisor at work who has mandated that thou shalt wear a mask. And so, you need to wear a mask. You might consider a design like this. I made this, obviously, but I didn't really invent the design. I'm not sure if the origination of this concept is more properly attributed to Zorro or to the Lone Ranger. Either way, if I just put this piece of cloth that I cut some eye holes in on my head and tie it around in the back, now I am indisputably wearing a mask. It's a mask that obviously is not going to provide any kind of protection against COVID-19 or other airborne biological hazards, but as such, it allows me to wear a mask without creating a false sense of security. Because, as you'll recall, according to the medical community, a cloth face covering doesn't really provide any protection against COVID-19 either. So, you know, in the case of a mask mandate that doesn't go into a whole lot of detail about what exactly constitutes a mask, which most of the ones I've seen referenced on social media don't, this would allow you to meet the requirement without contributing to any deceptive theatrics that may be going on the political theater. Now let's suppose you answer the question in the affirmative. There is a real, credible airborne hazard that we need to mitigate. Maybe it's COVID-19, maybe it's some other pathogen or virus, bacterium, maybe it's a radiological hazard at some hypothetical future event. Whatever the case is, we have an actual airborne hazard that we want to mitigate through the use of some kind of a mask. In that case, we probably need something that's going to provide better filtration of the air than a cloth handkerchief tied over your face, which is functionally what most of these homemade face masks are. Secondly, in the case of a virus that attacks the sinuses, another thing we need to consider is the proximity of your sinus cavities to your eye sockets. They're so close together that I've heard some physicians assert that the eyes are actually a more significant ingress point for viruses getting into the sinuses than the nasal passages are. So we need something that filters the air better than a handkerchief, preferably seals to the face better than a handkerchief, and that provides protection not only for the nose and mouth but also for the eyes. So, given those criteria, this is what I came up with. This obviously is made from an old military surplus gas mask. Now, the original activated carbon filters on this gas mask were, long worn out, used up, probably had been since before I was born. So I went ahead and replaced the filter with a HEPA filter that's intended for use in a hypoallergenic vacuum cleaner. However, HEPA filters were developed for use in radiological ventilation systems, and they are a very effective filter. They're about 130 times more effective than medical rated filters or face masks. So it provides a very high level of air filtration. And yet they're also fairly efficient. Air flows through them relatively easily. Meanwhile, the gas mask seals to the face much better than a handkerchief and does provide protection for the eyes as well as the nose and mouth.
And it's actually relatively comfortable, although I'm going to take it off because it muffles my voice and you probably can't hear me very well when I'm talking through it.
Now, does this provide 100% protection against a virus or other biohazard like COVID-19? Not necessarily. To get 100% protection, you'd need something more like a spacesuit, but that wouldn't be very practical and it would be quite expensive to put together. So I think if you're trying to mitigate a credible airborne hazard, this to me seems like the optimal compromise between cost, complexity, practicality, and the level of protection that it affords. So, those are my two possible solutions to the corona mask question. Hope you found this video useful or at least entertaining, and until next time, thank you for watching The Idahoan Show.